Welcome back. Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary and Labour MP for Ilford North, joined me earlier. Let's just quickly hear a bit of what he had to say.
There will be millions of people, disaffected Conservative voters like Dan Porter out there, who can see the chaos in the Conservative Party, see the failure to deliver, and are looking at the alternative. And I'd ask those people to trust the doctor, who's seen the Conservative Party up close, has seen the changed Labour Party of Keir Starmer up close, and has decided that ultimately we need a Labour government in this country to get our NHS back on its feet, to turn the economy around and to make sure that we can look to the future with hope and optimism again.
All right, well, let's get a reaction to that and indeed the issue of migration with former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, the Conservative MP for Newark, who joins me in the studio this morning. Lovely to see you again, Robert.
Good morning.
This Dan Porter defection, let's just deal with it quickly. I mean, Wes Streeting's rubbing his hands together with glee. This is brilliant. A doctor saying that the Tories have neglected the NHS, so he has to switch to Labour.
Well, I find it a very confusing resignation because I think Dan is wrong on the issue. You know, since 2010, when he was elected, we have increased funding for the NHS by almost 40% in real terms. So tens of billions of pounds extra. There's no suggestion that the Conservative Party doesn't care about the NHS, public services.
You must admit it's been a more difficult situation post-COVID to get a doctor's appointment. You've got now nearly 9 million on waiting lists, and we've had stories of people having to extract their own teeth with pliers because they can't get in to see an NHS dentist. So you cannot understand the Porter side of the argument, surely.
Well, I can understand some of the concerns of members of the public. I know them myself, my constituents feel them, and a lot of that does go back to the pandemic, which was an unprecedented event that put immense pressure on the NHS and its workforce. I think we are starting to turn the corner there. NHS waiting lists have been falling now, I think, for the last 5 months. But the idea that the Labour Party is the answer to this problem is complete nonsense. All you have to do is look at Wales, where they do run things.
We've been looking at
They've
Wales all
reduced
morning.
funding for the NHS and performance is worse across the board.
Wes Streeting says that overall responsibility for NHS failings needs to land with Westminster. But
he would say that, wouldn't he?
He would say that, but let's park that now. Let's talk about migration, because you've come out with a report with the CPS, these... had a mind blank.
Centre for Policy Studies.
I was going to say Centre for Political Studies, and I was thinking, what? The CPS, and basically you're calling, which will be probably music to people watching and listening to this ears, you're calling for a cap on legal migration. You're saying that legal migration numbers should be capped at 100,000. How would that actually work in practice? Because David Cameron, of course, talked about tens of thousands, and then everyone started putting their hands in the air going, oh, no, you know, the NHS will collapse if we put a cap on figures and all the rest of it. Can it work?
Yes, I believe it can, and it would do, and it has to work, because for the last 30 years, politicians of all stripes have promised controlled and reduced immigration, only to deliver the opposite. And the public are rightly furious at what's happened. It's placed immense strain on housing, on public services, on community cohesion, and it hasn't improved the economy. If it had, we would be racing ahead when, in fact, we've got low productivity growth and an economy which has been in recession for almost the last 2 years from a GDP per capita perspective. What we're proposing is that we return to the tens of thousands, but unlike previously, we have a cap. So Parliament itself votes for a democratic lock, so the public can have a degree of confidence, which they don't have today, that when politicians say these things, they mean it, and this will actually happen. And what I want to see happen is a budget, like the budget we have with the Chancellor. I want to see a budget by the Home Secretary, where they have to go to Parliament with proper forecasts, because remember, all these forecasts from the ONS, the OBR, have been terrible at predicting the future of immigration,
the OBR
and have real trade-offs explained.
300,000 legal migrants is baked into the system.
But that's far too high, Camilla.
Well, of course it's too high, but at the same time, we've had successive governments, Tories included, failing to do anything. I mean, this rise started with Blair. You give an extraordinary number here. Then 25 years up to Blair being in power, there was 68,000 net migration. The 25 years subsequently, we had 5.89, so that's 100 times as many legal migrants coming into the country.
And these are extreme levels.
Yes.
And I think, as you're saying, a lot of politicians and the media in Westminster are desensitised to what's happening. I don't think the public are.
No.
I think the public are extremely concerned, and they want politicians to finally do something about it.
What do you mean about Britain being a grammar school? You're talking about quality over quantity when it comes to the type of migrants we take in.
That's right. I want us to actually have a guiding philosophy behind our immigration system, not just make ad hoc, sporadic decisions about who comes here. And what I want to see is that we try to be highly selective. We choose people who will be net economic contributors to our country. The problem in recent years is that we've allowed very large numbers of people to come in, 1.2 million people last year, and we haven't thought carefully about who is going to really make a contribution to this country. And that is making the country poorer, not richer. There's been a prevailing orthodoxy that immigration is good for the economy. The report that I've done with the CPS and with Neil O'Brien, an excellent member of Parliament, disproves that. It says that actually the type of immigration we're having, which is predominantly low-skilled, low-wage migrants, is costing you and I and taxpayers across this country money. And we need to be much more selective and choose people who really are the best and the brightest, or who specifically fill in shortages that we need as a country.
We're going to have to be really, really quick because we're running out of time, less time than I thought we would have. Very quickly, will these Rwanda flights take off in the summer, yes or no, do you think, Robert?
I think they will do, but that isn't the point. A few symbolic flights is not a deterrent. Why I've advocated so strongly for this policy is I want a proper deterrent. That's why I tried to amend the bill. The government chose not to do that. We've got to have a deterrent. I don't think this is it, unfortunately.
Sorry we've been squeezed, but you've got your points across and we can see the report on the CPS website, can't we?
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Robert Jenrick. I've got to go. I'm going to be back next Sunday at 9:30, but up next, Michael Portillo.